Lots of other entertainment options, including one that I put together, a golf experience with me at Bayonne Golf Club with my pro and an 18-hole playing lesson that we will leave right here from the Seaport. There's concerts here as well. Go to ebay.com/ESPN to bid now through July 10th. And remember, all proceeds, 100 cents on the dollar, benefit the V Foundation for Cancer Research. All right, let's get back to KD here. Kevin Durant is now a Brooklyn Net. There was a statement released yesterday, right when we were on the air, on the afternoon special, from Warriors co-chairman Joe, it's just miswritten here, Joe Lacob, sorry, who said no player will ever wear Durant's number 35 for the Warriors as long as he is co-chairman. Now, Durant's friend and former teammate Kendrick Perkins said the following in The Undefeated about KD leaving, quote, "It was time for him to leave Golden State. They were taking him for granted." That is a very, very interesting statement by a man who, by the way, is saying a lot of interesting things in the media these days. Big Perk has been with us. Tim, I'm going to start with you. Do you believe the Golden State Warriors took KD for granted?
I don't think the Warriors took him for granted, but I think everyone else did, right? When he went to the Warriors, as you guys pointed out earlier, it was, hey, Kevin Durant is latching onto this team that's got 3 All-Stars, that's won 73 games, it's already won a title. He's the kind of the guy at the end of the train, right? But every time he got hurt, every time he wasn't on the court, every time he wasn't around, the Warriors are the ones who were saying, hey, we need this guy. He's our best player. He's our most important player. We were all having discussions during the playoffs about, are the Warriors better off without Kevin Durant? They were the ones who were saying, no, we're not better off without Kevin Durant. We need him back. We want him back long term. So I think it was everybody else who was saying that as opposed to Golden State.
Jacoby, what do you think? Because I feel like you talked to Jay Williams and others, I think there was a sense that the way they handled his injury to some degree contributed to placing pressure on him that may have caused him to come back sooner than he should have.
There was this narrative, is he going to come back in game 2? Is he going to come back in game 3? Is he going to come back in game 4? And when the Warriors aren't active enough in killing that, it feels like they are active in sort of perpetuating it, which might have pressured him to come back, which in turn led to the ruptured Achilles. But to answer the question, to echo what Tim said, I don't think the Warriors took him for granted. They offered him $220 million to play basketball.
Can I stop you there? You said that an hour ago, and I should have stopped you the first time you said that. Anyone would have done that, right?
Ask Jim Dolan. Ask Jim Dolan. Ask Jim Dolan.
Take them out.
Anyone who has ever seen a basketball game would have done that, right? Look, the injury is a major concern. It is a major question. How do guys come back from the Achilles? But in the world in which we live today, the day this happened, the morning after he got hurt, I had Woj and I had Brian Windhorst on this show telling me every team in the league will still line up to give this guy the max. I don't think that they demonstrated their appreciation of him by offering him. Look, they're the ones who sent him out there on the court telling him he couldn't get hurt, and then he did. I think they had no choice but to offer him the max.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get the max. And again, the injury, I think, was a pivotal moment in how much they take him for granted and how much they don't. You saw the way the GM spoke. You saw the way the teammates spoke about it. You see Steph leaving the game to help him back to the locker room. It just shows to me that they didn't take him for granted inside the organization. Outside, we did.
Yeah, I think sometimes the narrative goes that way on the outside, in the peripheral, whether it's us in the media or whether it's the fans. I think from a Bay Area perspective, and my family still lives up in the Bay Area, I mean, everybody says this is Steph Curry's team. Even after KD came, it's Steph Curry's team. They could say that KD was the best player on the court, that's fine. But to the fan base and to the people like in the
they
greater Bay Area,
were chanting MVP at Steph on the free throw line.
Which he is, by the way.
Sitting there hurt.
Right, but he has been an MVP, so that's not an inaccurate chant, by the way. So I think it's just one of those things where the fans on the outside, this will always see it as Steph's team. I think the media saw it as Steph's team. I think they looked at the move from Kevin Durant, and we had whether it was cupcake from OKC or whatnot you wanted to throw against him. That narrative started to stick. And I think in the back of your mind, it always plays out of, okay, do I need to go somewhere else? I mean, heck, I'm a 2-time MVP of the NBA Finals, and I'm still not getting necessarily the same respect that I see other guys getting. Maybe it's time for me to go move to the next chapter.
I'm going to make a comparison here, and one of them would be when LeBron James left to go to Miami and he became public enemy number 1 in Cleveland and everywhere else, it felt like they closed ranks around him, right? Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, they had his back at every turn. There was never any question that he was the guy there. They were all together. They were the amigos and all the rest of that. Did it ever feel fully that way to you for Kevin Durant with the Warriors? Did it ever feel like every single member of that team was as invested in him as he was in them?
It only did after he ruptured his Achilles in the NBA Finals. And until that moment, it did not feel that way.
The only counter I'll make to that, I was at that game at OKC when they first went back there, and there was a lot of times when that team was fully invested in him, I think. But the difference was that Heat team was kind of like public enemy number one, and they went around and they were wearing the black hat and they were kind of going at everybody. But the Warriors were so far ahead of everybody else that we kind of just assumed they were going to win. So I think there was just a different vibe around them all the time that made it kind of hard to really look at it the same way because they weren't even challenged. Like in the playoffs, the only time they were challenged was against Houston last year when they were healthy, and they kind of were like half asleep when they beat them. It was just a weird vibe around that team.
Let's get to KD and his future with Kyrie, and we've talked about it. You showed us earlier how they will mesh on the court. Now, in Boston with Kyrie, the Celtics had a better record without him, and that was last season. They won 12 of 15 contests he didn't play in, an 800 win percentage, but had just a 552 win percentage when he did play. Boston was better offensively with Kyrie on the floor, but they did suffer on the defensive end with him on the court, posting a better defensive efficiency when he was on the bench. And in Irving's time in Boston, it ended with a whimper when he shot 30% over his final 4 games, all losses as Boston was eliminated from the playoffs. We've talked about this a great deal. We will finally see these guys in a year's time, Sean, but when you think about just what's been said about Kyrie and then maybe adding KD into that mix, how do you see this playing out from maybe an off-the-court situation?
The stats are kind of a glass half empty on Kyrie, I think. But
you can look at it 2 ways.
They are the stats of what they were from last year. There's no question about that. You look over the course of his entire career, though, and how he's played, in particular in postseason moments. You go back to when he was with Cleveland, when he was confident, when he had LeBron James next to him. And I think the chemistry clearly was off this year with Boston. Tim, you know that a lot better than any of us sitting at this table. But I would also say this. You chose to go to Brooklyn. You chose to go there with Kevin Durant. This is going to work out fine. They're going to work well together. And if they work well together, then all of a sudden, a year from now, we're talking about this being the favorite in the East.
But that's a year is a long time. What does this year look like, Tim, when KD is somewhere rehabbing and Kyrie is the man on the Brooklyn Nets?
Well, that's what we talked about, I think, yesterday. To me, this year is a referendum on Kyrie Irving. When you go back through this past season, this was the big debate. Like you were saying earlier, Greeny, is Kyrie the problem? Are the young guys on the Celtics the problem? Is Brad Stevens the problem? There was all this discussion about what is the reason the Celtics, this team that was supposed to be the best team in the East, is not. And I think this year we're going to find out in Brooklyn because Kyrie's in a very similar situation with a young coach in Kenny Atkinson, young and experienced anyway. They have a young roster around him. They don't have Kevin Durant there. What is it going to look like? Is it going to be different, or is it going to be the same chemistry issues that he had in Boston?
It's really analogous. It's a young group of players. They exceeded expectations without him.
Yep.
They have a great culture. They have a great coach. And then you add Kyrie Irving, and we saw what happened with the Celtics. If it repeats itself with the Nets, KD's going to have to come in with a cape.
I would have a very different feeling about all of this if Durant was healthy and he was playing immediately. I think it would feel completely different. It's going to be very interesting to watch otherwise. All right, we continue here on Get Up, and I want to remind you that we will be back this afternoon. We'll be on ESPN 4:30 Eastern, and then tomorrow morning again on ESPN 2:8 Eastern, going through all of the busy news of free agency. 2 weeks ago, the Lakers were a mess. Now they're the team to beat. What's delaying Kawhi's decision? The latest from Wimbledon, the latest from the World Cup. All of that and more. Get Up 4:30 Eastern this afternoon, and then 8 Eastern tomorrow morning on ESPN 2.
Tonight, you landed enough Wyndham Rewards points to land in that oh-so-alluring place in your screensaver.
See you soon, Hammock.
Jealous! Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you triumph.
With advanced automotive technology available on the Nissan Rogue, you'll be equipped to help protect the moments that matter most. This is tech that gives you confidence. This is Nissan Intelligent Mobility.
You've heard the phenomenon. Now taste the whole collection with the $5 Nacho Fries box set. Now serving at a Taco Bell near you.